it weeks and
That's true.
months later. All right, we're recording, and today from New York City, we have a distinguished graduate of the School of Journalism and Mass Communications, advertising major when he was here. Over my shoulder, you can see the day of his graduation when we took a photo, and then you took off for sights unseen for you, New York. And I warned you, it's a tough place to go. Please welcome by show our guest today, Juan Carlos Luna. Welcome back, sir. Welcome home.
Thank you. It's good to see everybody.
So very quickly, tell us what's going on with you. You said you're taking off to Florida soon. What's up with that?
I am. Before I jump in, actually, I just remind me to talk about an internship opportunity that I think all of you, it depends on what years you are, but it's called MAPE. And that actually, I just saw a link that it's being, the deadline for that MAPE internship is being extended through November. Throughout our conversation, I'll bring it up, I'm sure, because it's a big part of reason I'm here, but just stay on that. Hopefully we'll ask you guys to stay on the call because of that conversation. But regarding Florida and next week, so on Saturday, so I have a bunch of vacation days that I haven't been able to use because of COVID, and I'm feeling pretty burnt out with the elections. Maybe you guys are too. And I've been doing like text, I really have been focused on the Latino community because I speak Spanish, and not just because I speak Spanish, but because my parents are immigrants who are now citizens who went through a really interesting time in learning how to manage a ballot, like an absentee ballot, for example, and we would help them with it. It made me realize that there's a lot of people probably in a similar position, and who probably just need a little bit of extra time and a helping hand to make sure that they know how to vote. So all that said, Florida is a massive swing state. It's incredibly important for this election. Really important to me to make sure that I get out there. And so I'm going to go on Saturday. I'm going to be on the ground in Orlando, Florida, which has a really large Puerto Rican population, overall Latino population in general, but a ton of the Puerto Rican immigration that happened from Puerto Rico to Florida since the hurricane has been to Orlando. So I'm going to get in there and I'm going to go hang out and knock on people's doors and hopefully not harass them too much, but really try to push them.
Good man, good man. The foot soldiers of democracy. Very good. Congratulations. I love that. So tell me about how are you doing now? I know you're recovering from COVID. We're hearing news reports, though, that recovery can take months and for some people even years. How are you doing?
I am very okay, thankfully. It was a really rough 10 days of fever, but I am, ever since then, I feel like myself again once it passed, thankfully. And I continue to make sure that I'm taking care of myself because it's not super clear whether I have immunity or not, even if I have the antibodies. I've since checked the antibodies, done an antibodies test recently, and it looks like they're not there anymore. So I'm back on. I mean, no, they're not there. That's a bad thing. I don't have it. They don't protect me any longer. So I'm back on.
Never mind.
I'm resetting like everyone else who hasn't had it, and I'm at the same level of danger. That's my assumption until it's different, right? So I'll be wearing a mask in Florida, who is being quite wild. Florida just doesn't really. Sometimes they just don't seem to care. So that's part of the reason I'm going. But yeah, so I'm doing okay. And yeah, my experience, I think you guys saw in that video, but I got it from, I went on a work trip to Europe and things were just starting to spike. And it all kind of came crashing down on a production that we wanted to make and actually we were never able to do for Celebrity Cruises, but it was going to be a great commercial. And so we're working on other stuff with them now.
So you're going to be able to follow up with it nonetheless.
Yeah. We're working on, I mean, everything looks different for them as a company. Obviously, you guys know cruises aren't cruising right now. That's my client. My clients change depending on whatever job I get, but cruises obviously aren't in action at the moment. So we're trying to make sure that we come up with interesting ways to get people's attention. One of them we just did, it was a super cheap, they didn't have a big budget, but I think you guys might appreciate this, and this is gonna make me sound really old, but ASMR as a concept, we brought this to the clients and they were like, what's that? And we're like, what if we do like ASMR videos of cleaning where you can kind of hear like the remote control being cleaned or like the squeaking of the elevator being cleaned? What if we make a few cute videos like that? Using the footage that you have, and we just do some sound design. And they're like, sure, you only have $10,000, which is very little in production. And we pulled off some really weird videos, like, the hand sanitizer noise and the whole overall like sanitation thing. So That'll be new for them as a brand, and they'll use it on social media to try to get some kind of attention to the cleanliness that they're bringing on board.
Now you talk about timely and smart critical thinking. Last summer, I went on a cruise on the Mediterranean, and I was always thinking about how do they keep this place clean, because we had 6,000 people in and off that ship over the course of 10 days, and yet it looked immaculate, it looked clean, we didn't have any problems, we had a great cruise. So to be able to put in visual range, yes, what people are thinking, it's not safe, it's not safe. What are they doing? What are they doing to clean it up? It sounds like you guys are hit on something very good.
Yeah, that's the hope. It's that's a small way of doing it, and we've got other bigger ideas that they haven't necessarily grabbed onto, but it's just an example of kind of making sure that they're getting attention from an audience they wouldn't normally, right? Like an ASMR concept on Instagram might be or on YouTube might be common for a lot of people, but not necessarily for their current base. So it's their current clientele. So there's an opportunity to get other people's attention about this cruise line and start to go a little bit younger.
Yeah, I see on chat some of the students in class are saying, excellent idea, good idea. Let me shift a little bit and then we're going to go to their questions. Let's talk a little bit about the dog-eat-dog world of New York City. You leave the comforts in your home state of California, born and raised in LA, and now you go out to New York. You've been there 9 years. What have you learned about the Big Apple?
Oh man, I've learned to love it, and I've learned a lot about myself. I don't think I'm the same person that I was when I left San Jose State. I mean, at my core, that's who I am. But I've learned to be more assertive. I've learned to be more clear about what I need. If you don't do that here, and if you don't do that in life in general, I'm going to be in a position of constant sacrifice, which is a common theme. I think I was raised with a humble immigrant family guiding me and reminding me not to be, the tallest blade gets cut, the loudest person. You kind of have to approach authority with humility and all of that stuff. And I that's part of my core, and it's always part of the way that I behave. But what I've learned here in New York City is that I have to be just a little bit above that in terms of levels of intensity at moments, right? All with respect and never with losing that. But I've learned to push myself to be very clear on my intentions. I have learned to realize that disagreeing with someone or any form of what I would normally perceive as conflict as being bad, I have to agree with it, and I don't have to agree with what everybody says, and I can say that respectfully. And so anyway, in terms of communication and stuff like that, New York makes you sharper. They talk about New York being a rude city, and it's not. I think that it's just that everybody here is going so quickly in their own world that when they're on the subway, they don't want to speak to each other. And I was just in Houston, Texas, visiting a friend, and everyone was saying hi. It was really funny. It was just bizarre to me. Everyone was like, "Hey, what's up?" And I was just like, "I don't know you, and I don't have time to say hello, but I did have time to be polite." I mean, but I think that the New York way that people kind of perceive as rude is not the case. There's actually a ton of amazing, you see a lot of people on the street, obviously. And if any of you who have been, I'm not sure, has anyone been here before? Maybe a few of you. I see a few hands. It's just always busy. Like those of you who have been here, it's always people on the street. There's always a store open. There's always something happening. It's just a buzzing place. So that's a ton of people interaction. So you don't have time to interact with every single one. But yes, when somebody needs someone, there's so many people around you that if somebody truly needed help, you step in, right? And I'm kind of conscious of that as a citizen of this society that is ultra packed. And you kind of see it now with the adoption of masks. I see so much adoption of masks throughout here because I think New York City got hit so hard with COVID that there's just an understanding that in order for any of us not to have to go through that hell again, we just have to keep that mask on. And there's kind of a social contract between everybody on looking after each other. Anyway, I'm going in a lot of different directions, but New York has grown me professionally and huge in a huge way personally. And I still love California, and I love to go back. And then every time I'm there, somehow I miss this little addiction that I have of like a fast-paced environment with so much to see and always changing surroundings. New York is constantly evolving. So if I don't go to a neighborhood for like 2 months and I go back, so many things have changed. There's a new restaurant here. The old one's out. It didn't make it. There's somebody else trying their version of their concept. So.
And we're starting to see that now in California because of COVID. A lot of businesses have simply gone under. And so
Mm.
new ones are being planned, but it's kind of slow in the developing. Let me talk about two more things, and I'm going to turn it over to Anthony and then Daniel to do the first two questions. But let me ask you a little bit about the growing cases around the country in COVID-19, and put that in the context of being a former college student. When you were in college 9 years ago, you had an opportunity to have fun, to hang out, go do whatever you want. Now this group of students are finding that no, we are under strong restrictions that
Yeah.
are designed to save their lives and to keep them safe. How can you relate
It,
to that? What would you say to them about the frustration of missing out on their senior year?
it sucks. I think it's true. Like you guys are right to be upset. I mean, I mean, forgive my language, but it fucking sucks. Like that's just, it's the whole world has been thrown into this upside down state. I think all of us had different imaginations, different plans for this year, and especially you guys who are in school. But I think there's some things to remember. Like I think, when I was in school, the economy had just hit a major recession, and I was wondering what that was going to mean for me in terms of having a job after 2008. We were still trying to rebound, and Obama was doing his thing to pull that back into place. But I didn't. There was so much uncertainty. So I think in that sense, I can relate to you. I think the fun part also is really hard. But I think if you're thinking about your senior year as your only year of existence, then yes, it's stressful. But I think what you have to remember is like we've seen so much craziness. I've seen so much happen in the last 10 years, and then so much great stuff have happened too. So I think it's just a reminder to yourself to like be patient, be kind to yourself. I promise you that everybody, the cool thing about this is not, I mean, not to make this sound ridiculous, but all of my FOMO during quarantine was out the door because everybody was in the same boat, and sure, there are people who are still going, but my understanding was like my friends are also locked down. The second we don't have to be, we're going to have so much fun. And so there's going to be also, as you kind of notice trends and like what people like to do for fun, I think that once this passes, and it'll pass, there's going to be a really big shift to like personal kind of connection. Like I don't want to look at a screen right now. I want to see somebody in person. I want to go dancing in person and like be at this place and dance in the middle of the day, not only at night. Like all of these different options, they're going to come up once we're okay. But I think that's going to obviously take some time. And I think that for those of you in your senior year, don't feel like it's your last moment. It's not. You're just getting started. Graduate, put that away, focus on making sure that your kind of foundation for your next job is hopefully solid, or your education. So whatever you want to do next, I would focus on making sure that that's set up, because once that's in a good place, and hopefully you're in a financial place where you can do whatever it is that you feel you're missing out on, money or not, I think that the point is that just start focusing on setting that foundation for whatever your next plans are. And then the world will kind of clear up, and then you'll have your runway to make this plan happen.
Very good advice. My last question, then I'll turn it over to Anthony to get us started. There was something about your video that was so personal that you shared at the end about being a member of the LGBT community. How has this whole experience affected your life and the LGBT community in New York?
That's interesting. As this disease in particular doesn't discriminate, right? So it's going after all of us, and all of our ages. And if it's living in us without symptoms, then it's going after our grandparents and the people who we make contact with. So you all know this, you've heard this. Be careful. As a member of the LGBT community, I think I see some parallels. I didn't live through the AIDS crisis and the AIDS epidemic that happened. I was too young for it, right? But I've had a lot of conversations with friends who experienced this in the early 90s, late 80s, who saw their friends drop like flies in a really, really sad, terrible way, right? And when I would hear those stories, it didn't, it obviously hurt, because I can't imagine that I would be at a party with a friend this weekend and then hear that they're in trouble the next, right? But then I start to see a lot of similarities in terms of responsibility, and a lot of like conversations around like having fun anyway, but still doing it in a safe way. And there's so much tension there. Just talking to my parents, there was something so interesting as like, they were literally kind of concerned about, there was a moment of exposure where my parents, a cousin of so and so has COVID, and who was, they start contract tracing between the family. This is in LA, and they started to point fingers and like, wait, you were with this person, you were with that person, you were around this person, and by association, everyone starts to get so nervous. Anyway, what I'm saying is, I think what they understood was that just like when people were going through the dangers of HIV, and thankfully that's still very real danger, but thankfully it's now in a much more controlled place. When people were going through that experience, you ultimately realize there's a responsibility to yourself to take care of yourself so that you're not exposing other people. And there's a really kind of similar relation in terms of that. Obviously, HIV is not necessarily a gay disease, but it did start and really hit the gay community the hardest early on, right? And it was ignored. And similar to politics now, it was ignored and no one would acknowledge it. And it took really, really aggressive actions with groups like ACT UP, for example. If any of you have ever seen any documentaries around ACT UP, if you haven't, I would encourage you to do so, because I think generationally we're coming back to that space where people are realizing that your voice is heard when you're the loudest and when you're physically present, and ACT UP was doing that type of thing. Anyway, I'm drifting, but I think that there are some similarities there. And then how it's affected me, I think everyone in the city has been affected. That obviously, I don't necessarily know that I can point out to one thing because I happen to be gay, but in this scenario, but that connection is there.
And you don't wrestle with being gay anymore. Is that correct?
No, God, no. It's like, so when I was there, I had just started to come out. I was, I think I came out, so I was in a fraternity. I'm an SAE member. I'm a founding member of that chapter. I don't know, I haven't kept up with the guys lately, so I don't know what it's like now. But at the time, it was a really diverse group of guys who were founders, right? And I was terrified. But we had one out member, and then he went away. He graduated. He was the former AS president at the time, and he was openly gay and he ran openly gay and all was good. And I kind of saw him as a role model, like, I'm going to be all right. There's not this inability to kind of still participate in everything that is the university experience. So I actually ended up running for president. And then once I was president, I was like, holy shit, if I don't tell these guys the truth, like, I'm going to kind of lose myself. So halfway through my term, I came out during a big chapter meeting in front of everybody. And I asked them, and I asked I got a lot of support and really amazing support actually from the guys. I'm forever thankful to them. And then I asked for an election as a vote of confidence because I wanted to confirm that I was still good to lead them. And they all reelected me. And so that was an experience that I had there. And that was just the beginning of coming out. Ever since then, I've done a ton of work personally, including therapy. I've now been married and I'm working on a divorce. It was a good 6 years. There's been a lot of life that's happened here in New York for me. And I think I celebrate it as kind of like, I'm not even done yet, but the more I can kind of shed the stress. It's not to say that I didn't go through a ton. I think what I'm speaking to you, I speak to you so freely now, but that wasn't the case when I was in the closet. And I'm just kind of, and I think that generationally, I think that's changed. People are coming out a lot earlier. That's amazing. But I think it's to say that the coming out experience can be a slow one. It depends on who you are. It depends on your surroundings. It depends on what support you're able to find and who you reach out to. And if anybody is challenged with their identity and needs help, then I would encourage them to seek it out. I went to the San Jose State Counseling Center, I don't know, for 3 years. And I would walk in there very quietly and talk to a therapist who helped me get through a ton, who I owe a lot of hardship kind of survival to. And that was all at San Jose State, because I don't know if Wigsy Sievertson, I believe she's retired, but I took Wigsy's class back in the day, and she's a legend. And I was mixed in there with like the baseball players. I was pretending to be straight. And then I learned a lot, and she kind of was like, I think you should check out counseling. And that's what I did. And then, you continue that journey. And anyway, I am in no way, I'm more than ever myself at work. I am very confusing to people at times because they're not used to it. But I in New York City, they're quite. I mean, there's quite a lot of us. It's such a diverse place.
There's quite a lot of gay and lesbian people in all professions, and particularly in the media. I will say to you that Wigsy is retired. She's doing well, and she was a wonderful friend. And when I first came to San Jose
Awesome.
State as a faculty member, she actually helped me to understand. And she told me, "Be careful, Bob. These Californians talk a good game, but they don't always accept when it comes
That's true.
time to promotion and in tenure and all that other stuff." And I never
Mm,
forgot that. All right,
yeah.
Anthony, then Daniel, then Shelby, and then you're on your own, folks. Take it away, Anthony.
Hi, Juan. I was particularly interested in your travels because you went from Bay Area to New York to Europe to Florida. So I'm interested in hearing how you're staying safe and just like all the different types of cultures you're meeting.
Yeah. Um so I have this weird joke on my religion because I kind of love astrology with my friends. It's really just like for fun. I'm a Sagittarius, right? So that's part of what I claim is my the travel bug. But all of it started for me. Um, I part of I think I don't recall if I said this, but I've talked about it before in the last video. I needed to get away from home in order to discover myself a lot more, and so I left LA and I chose San Jose State, knowing that I was gay, knowing that the Bay Area would be a safer place. I was drawn there, right? And then from there, I kind of continued on that journey. I still was really curious to meet others and be in other places. And that's what you didn't mention this, but I went to study abroad in Spain for a year. And that year was incredible. And Madrid as a city and Spain as a country, are incredibly open places, and super fun. And so talk about like a place to kind of feel comfortable in your own skin and part of having fun. I know that that you may not realize it, and we may not realize how important it is to have a good time because you're able to let loose and be yourself in a safe environment, right? That's what we're doing when we're having social interactions. And so I did that. I loved that in Spain. And then I moved back to San Jose State for my last year of my fifth year of college. I did a total of 5 years. I double majored in Spanish conveniently so that I can cover that in Spain. And then when I was wrapping that up, I had the option to move back to LA or go to New York. And I got this internship, the MAPE internship. I was approved for it, which I would encourage any of you who are advertising majors to really check out. And please, we can talk about it or ask me a question to follow up at any time. That brought me out to New York, and I continued from there. So I've always loved airlines. I've just been kind of a geek. My mom used to clean airplanes for United Airlines out of LAX. So that's kind of one of the stories that I tell my clients now. It's like, I want to do the marketing for you as an airline or a travel company. A part of that is because I grew up around airplanes, but not in the way you think. My mom actually used to clean them, and I lived in Inglewood, in LA. For any of you who know LA, I grew up in Inglewood, and the planes fly over every 5 minutes over my house. So I just kind of grew up staring at them. So I'm not afraid of planes, and I love to just get on one and go wherever it is. So part of my happiness comes from being in a different environment, eating a different food, and then seeing different people, meeting new ones, seeing old friends. It's just kind of the pattern that I've gone on. And then in terms of being safe, I use my mask aggressively, and I'm required to quarantine when I get back to New York City. And I kind of keep it to small numbers when I go see friends and stuff like that.
Very good. Thank you, Anthony. Daniel, you know something about traveling on airplanes. Why don't you take it from there?
Hey, Juan. So what question I have for you is, what advice can you give someone who may have to leave his own environment, place of comfort, and have to go travel for work? You travel a lot yourself and have moved to New York City. So what are some advice that you can give for somebody who hasn't really left the Bay Area for a really long time and may have to leave for work for a really long time? Could be a different country. For most people that don't know, and for yourself that don't know, I just came back from Afghanistan from work. But I came back, I stayed for about a month. So I might have to go for a year, 2 years. I don't know, it's unknown. But that's my question for you.
In terms of, you're basically saying relocation, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would never, as long as you believe that you're going to be healthy and safe, then you should do it. I think that some people have really challenging circumstances at home sometimes when they can't make the move. But if you can, and it's an opportunity, or if you could even reach for it and put yourself in a position to get an offer like that, I would take it, because you're not going to be, life is kind of about experiences to me. And I think that as you talk about your career, you become well-rounded as you get experiences with different people, different cultures. It depends on what line of work you're going to go down, but if it makes sense for you to be there, and this is going to build on your career, I wouldn't turn it down. And then however long you want to be there, that's up to you too, because I think everybody thinks that a move is permanent, and everybody might be afraid that a move is forever. In my case, I fell in love with New York, but I could have gone back a year later, right? And I would have been perfectly fine to continue on my career in LA. So the more diverse of experience you have, the more appealing of a candidate you are. So, all of you have heard the same, reminder to get an internship, get an internship, get an internship while you're in college. Great. But have you lived in another country? Can you speak to that? And, are you interested in speaking to that in interviews? All of that makes you that guy or that girl or that person who's going to stand out in that conversation when you go, the I pushed myself and I'm able to put myself in an uncomfortable situation. And I lived in another country that is not the culture of my own, or just different country in general. And now I've learned more things about myself. So you can always, like, every time I talk to my little sister about this, like, everything that you experience in life, you want to get more experiences, and everything that you experience can be translated into a work interview, if that's what we're talking about.
Thank you.
Yeah, for example, I talk about the fraternity when my very first job, when I interviewed for McCann. They were like, "Why would you put a fraternity on your resume?" And I was like, "Well, I turned it around, and I was like, I managed the inflow and outflow of a budget of $200,000, and I managed different relationships. I managed different relationships with university officials and certain people who had regulation over us. At the same time, I managed the personalities of my different officers, all 10 of them who had different roles, and I had to keep them flowing. So it was a business, it was a business experience. And that's really what these experiences. And then why would you move to Spain? Well, I was interested in getting to know another culture, and I learned this about myself. And since then, I have a story where I have a Lady Gaga story if anyone ever cares. But like, I left tickets in Spain, and I flew to London, and I had never been to London, and I needed these tickets overnight, and I made it happen logistically. And as an account person in advertising, it's all about the hustle and your ability to make things happen with very little resources. And I talked to that story in an interview. So I don't have work experience, but I have life experiences that show you what kind of person I am. Anyway, that's how I did that then.
Very good. Shelby, go for it.
Hi. So I know there's a lot of students, including myself, that are considering taking a gap semester or a gap year because of classes being online. And I know myself, I'm a transfer student, so I've never even stepped foot on campus. I've never been to any events, any classrooms, and I don't want to be like a year done with school and I've never been on campus. So I guess my question for you is, what's your advice on either like pushing through and just getting your degree, doing it, finishing up, or, taking a gap and waiting so you can really experience college life at San Jose State?
Yeah. Look, I think that's such a personal decision first. Like, it really is. It depends on what you want to get out of the experience. I personally would ask you like two things. One of them is, what are you going to do in that gap year? And is it going to be productive? Because it has to be. You're at a stage of life, I think, where it doesn't have to be. If you're in a place where the resources are fine and you're not in a rush to get your career and all of that stuff, then I would encourage you, take the time that you need. But I think ultimately my understanding of what the position that I was in when I was at San Jose State is I really needed to get that degree so that I can continue my life. I was using financial aid. I had my parents kind of waiting there to help me if I needed them to. So I was on a mission. And then I wanted to kind of move on, and I wanted to see what was outside of San Jose State. So I understand the college experience, but your age is going to change. Your age is going to change, but you can go back to San Jose State at any time. and you will potentially graduate and you can still go back to San Jose State. And if you want to experience college life in San Jose, you can go there as a graduate and San Jose State will still be there and the bars will still be there in downtown San Jose. All of those experiences that might be social. I understand though that there is an element of in-person interactivity. And like I talk about the fraternity, I realize that that's not an option the same way that it was. So I just think you're going to have to reshape your plans. And then make the best out of what you have in front of you, and it'll happen. Because if you take that tone to life, and if you take that gap year, say you take that gap year and you go and you do an incredible internship and you work for a year in a way that's going to build you up and you come back, fine. But if you think that life is going to be more fun in that gap year, I'm challenged to know that, because unless you have like plans that are like, well, I'm going to go have the university, like the university experience is what you're doing now for everybody. And then whatever, I don't know, whatever else anybody's doing outside of it, that's just going to be that. So like there's not like another dimension that we have right now. It's everything, like back to this, everything kind of sucks. So then how do you make it the best for you? And you know, and develop maybe a group of friends, and like maybe you can be more proactive in classes and say, hey, I kind of get along with you, or I like the questions you're asking. I don't know, like let's go grab a coffee. Just be safe, but like let's go hang out. Anyway, it is a really tough position, and I think that a lot of people are thinking about taking a break. It's up to you and how much you need that degree. I would encourage people to get that degree and move on, and then keep having fun. That it'll be there. And I don't know if what you mean the college experience is fun as a fun thing, but if you mean in terms of learning, sure, you can continue to learn digitally and continue to kind of push yourself. Anyway, you're like water, right? Like flowing through the different obstacles in life. You just keep going.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone? I didn't see.
No,
Martin?
let them jump in.
Okay, I'll
Okay,
go.
you guys. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Hi. You did say that you just moved to New York like right away. My sister did the same thing. She was like right after high school, her whole high school, she was like, okay, I'm gonna go to New York. I'm gonna go to New York. After she graduated, she went to West Valley, which is like a community college after that for fashion design. And like after that, she was like, okay, bye, I'm leaving. So she left. She got homesick. She came back. So she stayed over there for like 7 years. She's like married now. And it's like, why New York, right? So that's I have like two questions basically. So why New York? I know you said for like the advertising, but also why did you pick advertising for your career?
Oh, that's interesting. So advertising, I didn't even know that I wanted to do it until I just know. So in high school, I was on yearbook, and I was like, why am I here? And I just needed to get it over with. So I was bored, and I asked the teacher, like, hey, if I can, and I liked fundraising, and I called it that. I was like, can I find a way to make money for you? And he's like, sure. And he's like, what do you think? I was like, well, just let me have the last pages of the yearbook, and I'll get some local businesses to add an ad. But I didn't realize what I was doing was what is now media sales, right? So like I went away and I fundraised, and I got like $6,000, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Do it again next year. And I just became that guy for them, right? And then I realized I kind of like that. My freshman year, I met someone who was a PR major, and she showed me some of the classes they were taking. I thought it was so interesting. And then it really just kind of pushed. And so I always knew advertising. Then I started to realize how much I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed kind of, I'm not a creative, but I love creative people. And I love being around designers, and I love being around people whose creative minds kind of really stimulate me, and it's contagious, and I learn from them. I was never good at drawing necessarily, but that's not the only way to be creative, right? So anyway, that's why advertising, and I kept going down that path, and I don't regret it. And then New York, the reason New York came to be is because I've always kind of, in some ways, like I was looking at life through a bit of an opportunist lens, and like I needed to get this career. I needed to increase my odds of getting hired, and I needed to be in a place with a lot of people who do it. So my chances kind of just are increased that way. And New York is the advertising mecca for the US, and for, you know, we are the place. And then there's a lot of advertising now everywhere. LA, San Francisco, they're all kind of in some ways secondary cities to advertising. And I was like, I need to go to the first place, and then I get to move around. I've gotten stuck here like your sister, but it's not a bad thing. I mean, just to kind of note why I don't regret this decision is that while being here, the opportunities keep coming. And I'm getting hit up on LinkedIn all the time. And that's just because I have experience here. And I really think that hopefully when I move to another city, that New York experience is going to get me, they're going to know that I've like worked crazy late nights. I've pained myself for 10 years. Like it is intense, but it's kind of like boot camp, you know?
Thank you.
No problem.
Interesting analogy, boot camp in New York. Raise your hand so he can see who has a question. I need to see that also. Go ahead,
Okay,
call on
I'll just have
anybody you want.
Martin. I think I called you before.
Hello.
Okay.
I have a question on the video with Bob. You mentioned something about the crazy hours in New York and how they're kind of slowly dwindling. How you said it was normal for someone working in New York to get home around 9 o'clock in the evening. Now, you said that those might be kind of staying. Do you think that's more of a good thing or a bad thing when it comes to like, say, internships? Because one of the things you said that is it's mostly because people are starting to work from home, right? So because I've been thinking on the internship level as people trying to get into careers that it's very hard to do something productive as an intern from home, especially in different careers. Like for mine, it'd be kinesiology. So I'd have to be working with people. So it's kind of hard to entrust that into an intern. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's challenging. Well, your first question around late hours, yes, that's kind of the path, at least for this career path, and I think for most. You pay your dues, you know, and you kind of go in there and you do a lot of the unglamorous work, and that's really how you learn anything, is by learning what everybody did, and you have to learn it from the foundation, and all of the grit and all of the, like I said before, the hustle that comes with that. You have to kind of get that experience so that you can then feel the confidence to go to the next level, and you keep pushing yourself so that when you go up, you know, you go up and you build your house up and you're on the 5th story of your career, the foundation is set and it's not shaky, because you can't just declare that you're a 5th story house, right? And I think in your case, I think that is challenging, but I would ask you to get aggressive about it with other people who, and whoever works in your profession, and ask them that question, and ask to talk to them and say, you know, I think what you have to remember, and everybody has to remember, and I keep saying this, is that everybody is in the same situation. So all internships, so your career in kinesiology, and I assume that's like a level of like physical therapy type thing, or sports therapy.
Sports management, so working with the teams.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, look, that's reshaping, and you can see how it's reshaping now. So no matter what, your opportunity for an internship is an opportunity to learn, and your internship can be in person. Yeah, it's way more beneficial that way, and most times, but all of the conversations that these teams are having, if they can't have you there in person, that means that they're not meeting in person either, and they're having this Zoom call. So you're picking up what you can learn there, right? And I think for you, and for anybody, any experience is good experience. You want to get in on that action, and then yeah, is this the best internship this year? Probably not. Is the next one that you're going to get, probably because you've already had one under your belt and now COVID has passed, you'll probably get that one with more because you committed to no dead time. You know what I mean? Like you were productive with your time during COVID. The next one, you go to that interview and you go, yeah, COVID was pretty messed up and it messed me up all the way. And I really wanted to, you know, get in there, but here's what I learned in the meantime. And now I'm ready to be there physically. So you can carve your narrative, you know, as long as you're kind of thinking about productive ways to use your time.
Thank you very much.
Martin, let me jump in real quick and just say, I just had a student I approved for an internship who was stuck at home because of COVID, but decided I've always wanted to do this internship with this company. So she got in touch with the company, found out who the internship coordinator was. The coordinator says, no, we're not offering because of COVID, blah, 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 blah. She said, well, I understand that, but can I send you a proposal? Here's what I could do for you. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what you need to do, and I have the time to do it. Please think about it. She got the internship. It's possible. Next question.
I think I saw Brianna, and I'm on. Oh yeah.
Okay, Brianna, and then Courtney.
Okay. Hi. I first want to say thank you for being here, and throughout watching your interview and hearing you talk today, it's kind of crazy to see how freakishly similar we both are in terms of, you know, our leadership in college, moving from LA to San Jose State as being our big move. And I've also have dreams of moving to New York after I graduate. So during your answer to Daniel, you kind of mentioned that you would have been fine to carry on your career in LA, but you did stay in New York. So I kind of want to know, what was that moment for you when you really truly felt that you were where you were supposed to be? Like, was it scoring an internship or a job or maybe meeting someone? I just kind of want to know how you felt at home there.
Yeah. Wow. No, that's a really good question, because I think the truth is, for the many of the first few years, I felt like I was just like grinding like the gears, right? It's just like, I won't stop working. I'm on my third year. I'm exhausted. I've slept in the office now. It's like, I'm tired. I want to have friends. I use my weekends to like sleep, to catch up again. And all because I kept thinking, and you know, maybe it's not the healthiest way, but my mentality was like, you do this now, you get to have fun later. And so far it's true. So I think that my first few years were driven really by like, I suffer massively from like an imposter syndrome, right? That I have to prove myself. And I'm constantly in that space. I think it has a ton to do with the way that I was raised. I think it has a ton to do with not seeing people who look like me in these meetings. And everybody that I work with went to, who knows, like Penn State, and like some of them went to Stanford and Harvard. And I just don't come from that background. I didn't realize for many years what my contribution would be. And so I just kind of stayed in the mix. So I never really gave up. And then it all kind of started to click. Probably around like year 4 or 5, I joined a company called Mother. There's a small agency. They're really good people. Like, that's the best part, that they were just good people wanting to make really interesting work. I would encourage you guys to check out a lot of the creative that they put out. I kind of fell in love with the culture there. And these people were like, who are you? Tell us about you. They got way too far into my social media. It was really uncomfortable. Like, I was like, wait a minute. And then you kind of just learn to become more open. I personally learned to become more open, and I started to realize, this is what I bring. I bring the point of view of a person who comes from a working class family of immigrants. I'm a first generation American who grew up in an environment that never heard about advertising. None of my parents were in a corporate office ever. And I bring that point of view that nobody else can bring in this room. And I think that's when I was like, this is my angle. I don't have to be 24/7 that person. I also happen to be gay. I also happen to be from the West Coast, and Mexican as a Latino is not the definition of all things Latino. So I can speak to a segment of it, but not everything. So like, all of these different pieces allowed me to kind of start firing on different contributions. And I kind of started to feel more at home, to your question. And then, yeah, I met somebody. And even then I was like, you know, I was still young and I was married. And I was like, I'm too young to be married. And that relationship has ended. And now I'm having fun as like, this is the next version of me. And then I'll change again, probably. Anyway, I think for you, my encouragement would be, if you want to go to New York, go to New York. And if 6 months in you want to leave and you've interrogated it, and I mean, I would encourage like a year, because your first year, for everybody who's interested in coming to New York, your first year is like a big cry experience, like spontaneous combustion. Like, I would be on the subway heading home from work, and I just start crying. And it's not that dramatic, but sometimes it is. And you know, you just feel like, I feel sick today and I have to go in because I don't have any vacation days. And I you know, you probably shouldn't go in, but like, you know, I would push myself. And then after a year, if it's still what you want, you stick to it. You go for the next year, and you don't kind of make brash decisions. And then after that year, if it really doesn't work for you, then you go to the next place. But I'd encourage everybody who can to give it a shot. And then in terms of getting here, the internship, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this MAPE internship, because I had no contacts in New York City. This internship connected me to a place to live for an inexpensive price for the summer. They gave me an internship and a bunch of peers, people of color, who were on the same mission. And so we helped each other and we networked, and it's just an amazing way to kind of get started. And if you are able to get into MAPE, already that is a kind of an up on your resume, because especially now, even, you know, back then it was like an interest to bring in some diversity, but especially now, I think people of color in advertising have an opportunity to say, I'm here, like I'm right here. Do you know what I mean? And I think that the industry will always be big and open for everybody to work in, but there's such a small sliver in my case for people of color that I couldn't figure out how to get into, and this internship helped me get there. Anyway, I would encourage you just to go for it. Obviously be safe, and then but push yourself. You're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to have maybe 4 roommates, and it's going to be a tiny bedroom, and shit's going to suck, but it'll get better. You know what I mean? You'll be better for it.
Thank
Sorry
you.
for my cussing.
Very good. I'm going to say Tiana and then Brooks.
Okay, and I see Courtney too. And yeah, cool.
Hi. So what I wanted to ask was, since you have been in New York for a long time, and also like you have been in LA, and those two are like very busy, crowded, bustling areas. Would you say that you enjoy New York because of how much it reminds you of home, of like LA? And with your move from San Jose to New York and the different work ethics of the cities that like you have been in, do you think the reason why you stayed in New York so long is because that New York matched like your work ethic and like the way that you like, yeah, just like how you wanted to work and things like that?
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because I think that not everybody's the same way. So like my way of doing things is not everybody's, and you shouldn't think of it. My little sister like always has to like remind me like, not everybody's you, and we have this little joke, but it's like, but it's this thing where you're right. I looked to LA as a place that was interesting to me, and that was stimulating, that buzz that we're talking about, the hustle and bustle. It's not the same as LA. But there are, you know, when I move here, I'm drawn to places where there are more people like me, you know, people that, you know, neighborhoods that are more, that have a lot more Latinos, for example. I loved living in Washington Heights. It's an affordable place to move to in the city at the beginning. It's a strong Dominican community, and the food's amazing, and the people are fascinating, and it's just so warm. And that's what I looked for, having come from LA. But your point on me following LA because of the type of work I like to, the type of environment I'm willing to push myself into, that's true. Because people don't have to do that. You can go and have a more comfortable 9 to 5, you know, still making yourself, or 9 to 5, or independent and entrepreneurial, whatever it is that you want to do. I think the lesson there is not to move, that I'm trying to tell everybody is don't do New York, LA, New York, because I did that. It's more so, what are your goals, and what are the maybe scary steps that it takes to get there, but push for it and experience that. And so if you have a path that whatever it is that you want to do, that takes you to a very quiet city in the middle of the country, that is also an experience, unlike anything you would have ever done. So I wouldn't discourage you, you know, all from pushing yourself into whatever makes sense in your path. And sometimes it doesn't always make sense, and that's also a good thing, because you make that change, you just realize, that's not what I wanted, next thing, versus thinking about it and never kind of making it happen.
Very good. Brooks, I'm going to ask you to go next, and then Manny, would you be kind enough to continue the conversation? I have to check on my sister, and I would really appreciate your help. You see, you're not the only one that has someone at home you got to keep an eye on. So go ahead, Brooks, and then Manny.
Cool. And then I know, Courtney, you raised your hand. I see you. We'll get there. Okay, Brooks.
Hi. So it's great to have you, and it's great to have your voice talking about stuff across the country and what's going on with you. And I was just wondering, so my question is a little bit personal. I hope it's not too personal. If you don't want to answer, that's totally fine. But I was wondering, in what sorts of situations have you personally faced like discrimination or unfair barriers for either your skin color or your orientation at any time over your life journey?
Yeah, I think that I've experienced it at times without knowing. You know, discrimination without being aware. I think one of the major experiences that I had, that I just kind of finally told my dad about this year, when all of the George Floyd protests were happening, was that I was pulled over in San Jose heading to the ice rink. And I drove a beat up Honda Accord, and I had all the guys in the car, and I was just driving there, you know, and it was just, and I'm just a big geek who like wanted to be with my fraternity brothers, and obviously uncomfortable in my own skin as a guy in the closet. And I got pulled over by the cops, and then, you know, they blasted the lights, and I was asked to walk backwards, and I got handcuffed. And I was terrified because, like, growing up in Inglewood, there was a lot of things like that, but I always stayed out of it because I just kind of didn't want to necessarily be in trouble, right? And whatever qualifies as trouble, like, so in that sense, I was kind of not street experienced. Sure, I grew up in Inglewood, I understood a lot of things, but not necessarily with the cops. And that was the moment when I realized, and, you know, I asked him, like, you know, when I heard him pull out the cuffs, I hadn't even had a discussion. I was like, officer, and I was like, officer, why are you handcuffing me? And I said, are you arresting me? And then he, like, smacked my hands to, like, release them. And he's like, well, driving around in a car like that in this neighborhood will get you pulled over. And that just felt like, you know, it felt like I didn't even ask for that type of attention. So that was one moment. And then throughout, you know, throughout work, there's a lot of kind of quieter ways that it happens. Microaggressions around, like, oh my gosh, you're so tall for a Mexican person. Oh my gosh, how did you learn about advertising? Like, you guys are allowed to ask me because we're having that class, but, like, don't be surprised when I'm in the office, I have the job. Please don't ask me how I got there, right? Like, you know, I'm here, I've been screened just like the rest of you. So yeah, things like that. And then experiences with clients. I think I talked about in the video, experiences with clients when, you know, some people's biases kind of really come across. They make you super uncomfortable. But now I'm in a place where I think the environment around us has changed. I think people of all shapes and sizes and colors and everything are in a space where they're having discussions, you know, and I think that generationally, you guys hopefully are in a much better place than the tension that might be of older people who aren't people of color, mostly white people at work, who are very uncomfortable to ask a question like you just did, right? Or to really understand it. I think that generationally that's changing, and I'm super excited for what's coming. But I'm having conversations at work that are like, you know, this doesn't push hard enough. I don't think that the intention is here. And I know that everybody wants to be comfortable, but we need to push in terms of our diversity goals and stuff. So anyway, nothing brutally racist, probably because I would have come back in a really nasty way, thankfully. But yeah, you experience it throughout different times. Yeah.
Courtney, go ahead.
Thank you. And again, thank you for being here. I really enjoy learning about your experiences and everything. Because for myself, I'm kind of interested in New York after graduating. So I guess like a two-part-ish question, just short. What advice would you give for people like graduating? And because you left New York right after you graduated. And then also, do you think if you were anywhere else for advertising or anything, would you be as successful, or where you want to be in life?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I could have said that about myself to your last question about being as successful, but there's definitely paths, and I've seen peers who have gone on their own path, and I'm stoked to see them like kicking ass, you know. LA is a great work market, so is San Francisco, San Jose, of course, there's tons to do. So it's not, New York is not the end all be all. And then in terms of coming after graduation, that's also a really fair point. You know, I think that you have to make that decision. New York right now is looking like a more affordable place to be, because a lot of people have left open their apartments because they left, and it will rebuild and come back in a different shape. So when you choose to come is really up to you. I think your goal would be to get, it depends on what you're looking to work in, but like get exposure to that wherever you are, and then make the decision on when the right time to move is. Like, I think there's never really a wrong or right time. My best friend, for example, I lived here for 6 years, and then she was like, I think it's time, like I'm gonna move there. I never would have guessed she did. She came here, she put 3 years in of her time and had these amazing experiences. She worked as the executive assistant to the editor-in-chief of Cosmo magazine. Like, it was a straight up like Miranda Priestley kind of moment, right? And I was just like, I can't believe you did that. She was always like, I'm gonna do this. So she showed up as the woman from LA who has LA experience, and she can bring that point of view, and it worked. And she's, you know, then she went on to Refinery 29, and she's done amazingly in her own path. And she came 5 years later done than I did, you know. So when you show up, don't worry about that. I think don't feel that type of pressure that you have to. It's a great place to start. It is also a brutal place to start, and some people choose to kind of have some things established before they come. Cool. 15 minutes.
All right, thank you.
But let me know if that answers your question. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome though, because I'm kind of interested in doing that. So that's great to hear about your friend.
Awesome.
So I'm going to do Ariana, Polina, and then Riel.
Okay. Hi, Juan. My name is Ariana. My question is kind of, I know everybody keeps talking about New York because, you know, like who wouldn't want to visit there? But my question is more like specific, because I'm also in like, I'm studying graphic design, but I kind of want to get into marketing and advertising. So my question is more so not necessarily like what it was like to go to New York literally, but more like what was your, like how did you go about your plan in terms of like finding a job and then going there? Like what did you do first? Did you get the job first and then found an apartment, or did you find an apartment first and then found a job? Like I just want to know like the journey.
So yeah, no, for sure. I have like these, I just, you actually just caused me to remember these moments because I hadn't thought of it. I would like spend like sleepless nights, kind of like giddy and excited, just clicking around and seeing what, I'm like, who is this? Like, and what do they do? And what is this agency? And what, like, I imagined the whole, what I had constructed in my head of what New York was fully constructed before I came. And it was nothing to do with it. But all of that basically allowed me to imagine that there's this place there where there's these companies, maybe I'll start approaching them, and this is the way to go. So anyway, clicking around, I don't recall how, I'm pretty sure, yes, somebody in one of my classes was like, I just came back from New York, and I was like, how'd you go? And then he's like, I went on this internship, and that's what I keep coming back to. So personally, I came through an internship program, which I would really encourage anybody, either through a program or any internship in general, to try to get that lined up first, because to show up here without a job is possible. And you know, I think what you want is a thread, like a thread to grab onto. And, you know, I made some friends who worked in production here while I was in Spain. And then, you know, I just happened to meet them in Spain. And then I was like, wait, I want to come see New York and see what production is like. And they were like, sure, meet my friend. And that was it. And so just having those kind of conversations and being very curious will get you to kind of understand, where do I want to land as my first step? You don't have to have the full plan. But it would be really hard to tell you that I had enough money saved up to get my own apartment. I didn't. You know, if it weren't for this program where I came here with my first landing pad, which was, you know, an internship for 3 months. So I knew that, all of us knew, once you start that internship and you hit the ground in New York, the clock was ticking to try to lock something in. So like there's like this frenzy of people, and I was doing so many interviews while I was an intern that didn't go through. And then the one that did work, it did hit, and I grabbed it. And I didn't want that job necessarily in the most exciting way. I didn't want to do, it was advertising for an oil company from ExxonMobil. And I was like, you know, I don't want to do this, but it's an experience and I have to, I need something. And that's kind of what I jumped onto. So with that offer letter in hand, you know, 3 of my friends who were interns, so that's how we got the apartment together. We lived in that apartment for 2 years, split the rent, and made it work for ourselves. So yeah, like I think I would encourage you to at least get a sense of where you're going, whatever city you choose and whatever you want to do next. And then just get really curious and do your research in terms of what internships exist, who hires at what level. So that way you kind of have an informed decision as far as you can inform yourself, right? And then you don't have to know the final last step, but at least a sense for you to get a place to start. And all you want is an anchor, an initial job, and then you start to meet more people in that job. And before you know it, if you go to this, you know, if you go down the advertising space, but still are creative in design, which we should talk if that's what you are curious in doing. And if you are a designer, I mean, in general, there's a lot of opportunities. But once you get into that space, you have a name, you have a book, you have an experience, you start to develop like a few more projects in your design portfolio. And then suddenly you're meeting other people who are like, wait, are you free? I need somebody. And then this is how it happens. And, you know, a LinkedIn request and a LinkedIn invite, and somebody's like, wait, are you interested in interviewing for this? You're like, oh crap. You know, I got my first interview for my next job after I was really lucky. 11 months into my first job, somebody was like, hey, are you interested in doing the business here at Ogilvy? And I was like, I mean, was it paying? Yes, like, sure. So I went, I did the interview, and they basically said like, are you willing to work crazy hours and be in pain? And I was like, I do that already. And then they were like, okay, here's the pay. And I was like, that makes sense, I'm coming. And so that's why I did it. But like, and then that was also a painful experience. But what I'm saying is like a thread, one thing to kind of grab onto that makes sense, that feels like a safe way to go for it. And then once you're there, you kind of navigate the rest and start to build out what you want to do.
Great, thank you.
No problem. Next person.
Okay. Hi, and I actually want to say that I can relate to you so much. So, professor likes me to tell everyone where I am and where I'm from. So, actually, a lot of my professors enjoy having international students, and I'm from Ukraine, Kiev, so I'm in capital, and I know this feeling of the big city. And when I visited San Francisco, I'm like, wow, that's like Kiev, but with tons of skyscrapers and homeless people. So like, I know I know how it feels. And like when I was in San Jose, I felt kind of bored without theaters, museums, exhibitions, and all that stuff. But and also I'm like Ariana in graphic design field. So I was listening to you, how you were saying that you need to work hard, and I understand that, I do that, but also you need to be like persistent. You need to push yourself forward and like not let others let you down, or you need to be so self-confident that others believe in you as well, right? So like, but naturally I'm a very soft person, so and my mother constantly repeats the best place under the sun is shadow. So how did you manage to come out of that mindset? How did you change that?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I think that in my experiences, even though, so the part of my career, I deal with people, especially I deal with clients and I deal with my teams, and I'm always on with people, right? So that experience at San Jose kind of was the way I did that capstone. I was in Dwight Bentel and Hall, and I did that campaigns class. I think it's still there. I'm pretty sure it is. And I kind of had that experience. So I started to kind of, and the fraternity, and I kind of got involved in extracurricular activities that pushed me to challenge this, not even realizing that that's what was happening, right? I think though, the part where persistence doesn't mean like loud and personable. Persistence is persistence in whatever you need to do. And I think in your example as a designer, your work will speak for itself. So your persistence would mean developing examples of what you're good at, creating a website that shows off what you're good at, that speaks for you, right? And I know that whenever I meet a designer, it absolutely is never a first, you don't ever meet a designer and decide that they're good or not based on the interview. The work tells you what they're good at. So I think that for all of you, it depends on what you want. My job is about gab, like, you know, it's about talking a lot, and it's not the only thing. I have to manage and be highly organized, but I need personal skills. However, there are other parts of careers that you still want to be personally pleasant to work with, but that's not your first thing. Your output is a design and your creativity and your mind's transfer of whatever you see and whatever your brief is in front of you. Anyway, I think in your experience, your persistence will be to develop, you know, examples of what you're good at with your graphic design. If you're not necessarily there yet, to get that experience and learn it. And then also identify what you want to grow in and go after it. That's your version of persistence. And then you would develop something that the world can see, so that you can then go after people persistently in email. And, you know, you can still make the calls and kind of get on people's radar, but your work will speak for you.
Okay, so
about
like
5 more. Sorry.
Like, super like
really fast.
It's more yes or no question. So I should go about no with my work. So if someone says no, I should like look at my work and think again. No?
I think you should do what you can to find somebody who can be honest with you. So I think you want somebody who can honestly give you feedback and say, this is actually great for entry level. I would use this as your work. Or go to a professor or a teacher, listen to them, because whoever's giving you that advice is telling you this is good, but in your case, I would work on this a little bit more. And then you go, is this what you mean? They're like, yeah, better, cool. Do you think this is ready to share to a job? Yes, okay. So if somebody tells you no and closes the door, If somebody says, no, we're not hiring right now, it doesn't mean you're not good.
Yeah,
That's where
okay.
you go on to the next one and you go, hey, are you hiring? Here's my book. So yes, you keep pushing, but you do want to develop your work. So don't assume that because you get rejected. You can also ask why. When they go no, you say why. You know, not why, but can I ask more about what's driving that decision? They go, we're not hiring now. Cool, then you move on. But if they go, you're not quite up to our experience, you say, can I see some examples of your junior designers and what those graphic designers' output looks like? You know.
That's great advice. Thank you so much.
We have time
So I think
for one or two more questions. That's all.
so. Riel is next.
So really quickly, as someone who's had COVID, what is your response to those specifically college students who refuse to believe that the virus is real?
I mean, does anybody believe it's not real? I think some people are conveniently saying that they don't believe it because they don't want to care. So everybody knows that it's real. And if you're saying it doesn't, then maybe just go to a hospital and like see the people in body bags. But if you are refusing on purpose, then I hope that you live alone and I hope you don't see other people. That's it. Like if you live alone and you don't have any exposure to other people, you can do whatever you want. And if you want to pretend that the virus doesn't exist, there's a really great Midwest with like a ton of open space. You can go to Montana and be as free as you want to be with tons of space and not a lot of people. But like as a citizen of the earth, and the realization that you getting in a car and going to a grocery store and sneezing or not realizing that you touched yourself and you might have the disease and you might have passed it to somebody else, that's messed up. Because there's been employees who are working at Ralph's who have to go to work, who have to go to Safeway to work. They must do this because they're essential workers who aren't asking to be exposed to you. And just because you went wild and like got a little carried away last week and suddenly you're becoming a super spreader, like just I think it's to realize that you have a duty as a person, you know, as a human who is a decent person, not to infect other people. So wear the mask. And like, if you're gonna have fun, yes, you're probably gonna go, I mean, hang out with your friends, wear the mask. Like, you know, I think it's just kind of a give and take. The 100% denial and like zero mask is just not fair. And it's really, really reckless. It's just kind of frankly disrespectful. But I think that there are ways to find that middle ground, that you are being a little bit risky, fine. But then if you're being a little bit risky, just wear the mask. Like, you know, I think that's my response to that.
Can I say?
Really quickly, Michael is raising his hand.
Well, hold on.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to say thank you to you both, but Christian gets the last word.
Go ahead.
So
I can stick around.
Hi. So basically, it seems like.
Hang on, Michael. Michael,
Yeah.
Christian had his hand raised on the other page, and Bob called on him.
For sure.
Hi, so I live about 8 miles away from Inglewood, and what I notice is the Latin American culture is huge. So as a Spanish speaker myself, how have you used that into your daily work?
Where do you live? What city?
I live right on the border of Torrance and Redondo Beach.
Cool. Yeah, I used to work at the El Torito there. Can you ask me the question again? I got too excited.
So how have you used Spanish in your line of work? Like how do you use that?
Yeah. I mean, it's been super helpful because it just depends on the campaign, right? And what the client needs. But I can definitely speak to the market, you know, as the needs for the market when there's a creative idea. You know, marketers kind of often don't necessarily involve people of color when they're trying to market to people of color. And then you get situations like Kylie Jenner and the Pepsi ad, you know, the Pepsi ad when you're just like, wait a minute, that's so tone deaf. You're not paying attention to the true experience of these people. So that's messed up, right? So I use my experience as a Latino as much as I can to ground as much of the work and to try to kind of guide that we're representing a creative story that is representative of more than just this little sliver of media. And then in Spanish, yeah, I use it. It's a huge help. I've gotten projects because of it. I didn't necessarily go into Hispanic marketing directly, but I've had projects that I've loved because they've been so focused around it, and that I've gotten because I've raised my hand and said, I kind of want to work with Latinos right now. It was this Target project, and we worked with the Billboard Latin Music Awards, and we had this amazing group of people, and I got to go see everybody live, and I saw, like, I was at the concert, and anyway, that was the good part. But this project came together because I was like, I want to be more around. I'm now at a place where I want to market to people like me, and I want to see what that experience is like. I just raised my hand. So it never hurts you to be bilingual, trilingual, beyond, because it just adds another layer to who you are, and what you can do.
And one more question. You
Hold
work
on,
at
hold on. I'm afraid I'm going to continue to let you talk in a moment, but I have to end the session so other students can go on to their next class. Please thank our guests for being here today. And then those of you who want to stay, you can stay on for a few more minutes. Everybody else, I'll see you next week.
Cool. I can do like 5 more minutes. Yep.
Awesome.
Thank you, Juan.
So you worked at the El Torito on the Strand, correct?
No, I worked at the one, I think it's shut down right now. It was like off of Sepulveda and like.
Oh, okay, yeah, that one.
I forgot. Yeah. That's it.
Very
I think,
quickly,
are there any?
Out of time.
Yeah.
Me? Cool.
Quickly.
Okay, so a lot of students were like, oh my God, like I can relate to you. Like I want to like go to New York. Oh my God. But like what actually like gave you that like final push to be like, I'm actually going to do it instead of being all talk? Because I feel like I'm the one to be like, oh, I'm going to go. And then I'm going to just like end up just talking about it for years. So like what made you be like, I'm going to freaking do this?
So I had a boyfriend when I was in college right before I left, and I was like, I'm in love. It's been 6 months. I'm in love. I'm gonna stay here. And my best friend who I told you about was like, Juan, you've been talking about New York in one way or another since you're in high school. This is bullshit. You have to go. And I trust her a lot. And I was like, wait a minute, you're right. So I went, and I did it. But I think what pushed, I always have been kind of somewhat of I just kind of, if I want to do something, I just go after it. And I think that I'm really thankful to be in that position, that I have that decision process in my mind. But here's the thing, you should know that before I do it, like if I say I'm going to go to New York in a year, I will spend that year researching and going in circles and asking questions and being nosy and asking my friend to ask their friend about what their experience is like. In this conversation here, if I were watching myself speak, I'd be like, what did he say? Hold on, let me go research what that is. What is Washington Heights? All of these different things. And you start to build a puzzle. Kind of, it's like a Google map that is not loaded. Back in the day when they didn't load fast enough, and like suddenly you're developing your point of view on what you want to do. So like I would encourage you, instead of just talking about it as something you want to do, research it, ask people, message people, ask them about their experience, get to know what jobs are out there, and just start asking and being curious, and then it's going to click. And then there's going to be a scary point where you say, I'm going to do it. I don't know enough, but I know I don't know everything, but I know enough.
So
and now it's time for me to make the move.
That's like, I'm just going to
definitely
just like screw it.
And if can I interject real quick and say one other thing that might happen? When I got to that moment, my mother stood at the door and cried. You're going to leave? I said, yeah, Mom, I have to do this. Mm-hmm. And she didn't understand then, but later in life, she understood quite well. Other questions?
Yeah.
I had one, sorry. So I feel like we also have the same background. I'm like 20 miles away from Inglewood, but like still LA.
Nice. Cool.
And I know that you're like a queer Latinx man, so I'm just like, how do you find spaces that want you not just like as a token like diversity person, like, oh look, we have this person in our team, instead of like someone who actually wants like those people to like uplift their company? Like, how do you find those spaces and distinguish that?
I think that there's a little bit of there's like a little bit of both. Like in some ways, I'm just going to do that anyway. Like if that's the reason you want me, well, that's not the reason I'm going to be here. So I'm going to make the best of it. Like I've been in situations where I feel like, do they want to tokenize me? Am I going to allow that to happen? No. I'm going to show up and rock their world. But if like what other people's intentions are, if you feel safe to be able to protect yourself, that you're going to be able to get your mission done, then you should do it. Like, it's kind of like, if you want to use me, I'm going to use you right back. And you're going to give me that money. And I'm going to let you know that this is what I'm worth. This is how much I would like to get paid. And if you really need to tokenize me, you'll pay me. And also, by the way, like, you keep pushing yourself, and then you develop a sense of like, then the scripts are flipped. Suddenly you're that person of color who shows up and you have a ton of experience that doesn't make sense to them. You're like, wait a minute, I have a lot of offers because there's so few of us. And I am worth it for you, and you know that. So like, it's kind of like a game of kind of taking back power. And I know what you're saying, because I think that there's a lot of environments that do make you feel terrible. But I think that the second that you don't feel good in a place, you're probably not wrong to start looking for the next gig. And you don't quit this one yet, but you start to become, it's just like a relationship. Like, you're not treating me right, I'm gonna go where I'm treated right. And that's what you get. But I was here because I needed this experience, and I got what I needed. So it's like, it's kind of a game that you play back. If you have the mentality in corporate America, like it's mutual use, it's actually kind of in an odd way, it's kind of helpful. I don't know if that answers your question.
Bob,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I have to go, but
it was, bye-bye. It was excellent advice, by the way. Go ahead. Any final questions? We're about to go.
Hi, Juan. I was just wondering if you could, sorry about my dog, if you could share more about the internship you mentioned earlier.
Yes, it's called MAPE. Look up MAPE. Hold on, I'm putting it right here. Oh shit, no, that's not it. MAPE. It's auto-correcting. It's MAPE. I'll send it to Bob also. It's the 4As is the organization that represents advertising. And it's the MAPE internship. And it's basically in all different ways of advertising and PR. You guys should check it out, and please do apply, because there's never enough San Jose State people who apply. I applied twice. The first time I got rejected, the next year I applied again and I got in. So get on their radar. If you're early in your career, or sorry, in your college years, just get on their radar and do the interview process. Even if you don't feel like you're gonna get it, you get the experience and the exposure. They'll interview you, they'll ask you to write essays. It's definitely work, but it's worth it. And then hopefully the next round you can get in. But yeah, I would encourage you to go full at it. I didn't have the grades for it the first time or the experience, but you might have it. So I'll make sure that Bob has the link, and you guys hopefully spread it around to your friends and stuff, because it's really a great program.
Very good. Final thoughts? Final thoughts.
Is there a way that we can contact you, just like if we have any further questions? Because similar to a bunch of other students, I do feel like I have like a lot, like I do feel very similar to you. Like I also lived in Los Angeles. I was also at San Jose State. Is there a way that we can reach out to you in the future if we have questions? Like an email, phone number?
Find me on LinkedIn and message me there. Yeah. My full name, I think Bob shared it. You'll find me there. And then I'll make sure, that's not how, I'm really not spelling right now because my hands are up in the air. But I will make sure that Bob has my LinkedIn link and then the 4As thing, and you're more than welcome to ask me whatever you guys want. I might not always know the answer, so bear with me, but happy to respond to whatever.
I'll write it down, yeah, because I do feel like there's a lot of questions that I could ask, and I don't want to keep bothering my professor and other students about just being annoying. So
cool.
No, Michael, you annoying?
No, never. I'm not. No, never.
Guadalupe, do you have any questions? Ariana, very quickly.
I did have one question. I know in the interview with Bob, you talked about understanding and knowing you're a person of color and how often you are the only one. My question was just like, why do you think there is a lack, or why do you think is the main cause of lack of diversification in the workspaces like yours?
People just don't hire people. People are not. There's a ton of structural reasons why they aren't hiring people of color, and whether they consider themselves racist or not, those structures are inherently racist. Like, you know, they may be hiring only in their groups of friends, because often it's like, who do you know? Well, if you only know white people, you're only going to hire white people. And I think that that's just unfortunately where we have to do extra work to break in. And it sucks, but once you kind of get into that position, you hopefully can start to kind of shake things up. But yeah, the answer to why is like, so we know that it's like deep and ugly, and realistically, we were probably never given a space initially, and now we're given a little bit more space, and now we're hopefully seeing a world where they're starting to give us even more space. But you kind of have to get in there and take it. And I know that sounds. It's not fair. I think that's the answer. We know that people aren't going to be the most welcoming. We know that these environments aren't holding, you know, there aren't open arms for us all the time. It's like, hey, this is corporate America. It has to be hard. Well, it's actually even harder for people who come from backgrounds that aren't like theirs. But I think that the reminder to you is that if that's what you really want, you should go after it. That is to say, though, that the advertising industry is recognizing that we are not appealing to young people of color, because young people of color sometimes don't even want to deal with that, understandably, right? So it depends on your goals, and I respect that people would choose not to go into it. But I think that there is some space. It depends on how you treat life. There is some space for you to get in there. You will establish a platform for yourself. You will identify, like we said, if you use corporate America to your advantage, then you go in there, you get your 2 years, and then you go off and use that experience to create your own environment that does work for you. So it's kind of like this give and take. But the answer to why I promise you, I'm trying to work from within, and it's definitely really hard. But if you are interested, you should lean on people, lean on me, ask questions, lean on other people that you see, ask questions that may not see. Like, the reason I'm here is because I was comfortable, and I'm thankful that I had people who I could ask questions to, strangers or not. And I think that some of us, if we don't have, there's not going to be a way that advertising can pull in, that we can look up to a person in advertising who looks like us or looks somewhat not like the rest of people, unless somebody's willing to open up. So that's my duty, right? Like, my goal right now is to reach back and pay attention. I'm busy as hell, but like, if I can answer questions that make sense to help you, I want to do that. That's my contribution right now, realizing that I was helped by a ton of people. I'm still not done getting help. And this is how we play our networking up. That it's literally, you know, what has happened in circles that are all white. That's because they helped each other out, because dad's friend works as an attorney for that company, and that's why you got that internship. Well, now it's time to play this back, and that's my turn. And I'm gonna get my nephew a job at the company that I can, because that's the way the game is being played right now. And until it's not, you know, you kind of do that.
Thank you, Juan. I appreciate that answer.
Ariana, anything last? Very quick, very quick, very quick.
Yeah, I do.
No, I just want to say thank you.
All right, very good. Now
Thank you
know
guys for
why-
staying on.
Well, now everybody knows why I wanted this guy to come and talk to me live.
No, we don't.
reach out with any questions, you guys, and please check out that internship. What are you all majoring in?
I'm PR.
I'm communications, minoring in journalism.
Design.
Awesome. Design, cool. Okay. I mean, if you all want to talk to, I have some familiarity with what you do, so then I think I could speak to it a little bit better than if it were like an engineer. So reach out, let me know.